You can leave them on. Yeah. This. Yeah. Good evening, y'all. Good evening, good people. Thank you for being here. We see more people are coming, which is why we were waiting. But we know the rain kind of fell out the sky there, so we were trying to wait a little while longer for the people. Excuse my voice, but we're going to keep this party going. Welcome to Third Space Action Lab. Is this anybody's first time at Third Space? Or okay. Good, y'all been here before. Welcome to our viewers online in virtual world. Next time, come into the space. Come be here with us. My name is Dr. Siobhan Nash. I am project director for the Cleveland Freedom Dreams Coalition at Third Space Action Lab. And so this series, Freedom Lectures, is a part of the Cleveland Freedom Dreams Coalition. And so we are very excited. We actually started our Bet on Black Juneteenth month with the Freedom Lecture, and we're ending with the Freedom Lecture. So very exciting. Thank you to everyone who has supported and attended, participated, shared, hyped, joined in this Bet on Black celebration. I hope y'all feel as invigorated as I do and as we have wanted to share. I'm gonna just go ahead and get the description read for this conversation, and I'm gonna introduce our moderator. So Living Out Loud Black Queer Dreams and Collective Liberation is a dynamic freedom lecture that celebrates the intersection of blackness and queerness through the lens of freedom and community. This lecture invites us to reimagine a world where black queer identities are not only seen, but deeply valued, exploring how love, resilience, history, and collective action can shape a truly liberated future. Join us for an evening of storytelling, dialogue, empowerment, where we dream together, learn together, and build a blacker, freer tomorrow. And I'll introduce our moderator, who will introduce the rest of our panelists. Sir Mylan Cartwright is our moderator today. A native of Cleveland's Kinsman neighborhood, was deeply immersed in the arts from a young age. Thanks to early exposure through his sister and extensive training at an institution like Karamu House, where he worked with renowned mentors such as Mike Malone. His multidisciplinary journey spans dance, theater, culinary arts, fashion and makeup, including certifications and studies at Kent State University and Paul Mitchell Hair School, leading to performances in musicals, films, and gospel tours. Today, Mylan channels his passion into arts education and community advocacy, working as a program coordinator at the LGBT Center of Greater Cleveland and production manager at the Fluke Cultural Arts Center, with the goal of becoming Cleveland's own Andre Leon Talley. All right, I know that's right. All right. Welcome, Mylan. Thank you for being here. I'm going to stop talking, and here's your mic.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Nash. Thank you for having me. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hi.
Hello. So I want to introduce our panelists. We're starting with Aaron Lang.
Hi.
Aaron Lang is a black Ohio-born powerhouse, part cultural critic, past creative visionary, who's made in her life's work to uplift in lives and legacies of black transgender women. From organizing the first ever National Day of Action for Black Trans Women to hosting the Emmy-nominated PBS series First Person. Erin brings heart, history, and heat to every stage she steps on. She sparks conversations at the White House, created a viral digital series with Anne Hathaway, and helped launch a groundbreaking initiative like the Illuminations Grant and institutions like the Marsha P. Johnson Institute. Whether she's behind the mic, in front of a camera, or writing the blueprint for liberation, Ms. Lang is here to shake the table, tell the truth, and remind us of all of the beauty in black trans brilliance. Let's welcome Miss Ari Lang.
Hey. Aaron.
Oh, Aaron. I said Ari. Aaron Lang. All right, next we have Dakota Cox. Dakota is the black Amazonian goddess, the BAG of the Midwest. She's multifaceted powerhouse with all types of tricks up her sleeves, ready to snatch wigs, edges, and doll hairs. Her drag is infused with female impersonation, to pay homage to the Black beautiful women who have raised and inspired her. In her 8th year as a drag queen in Cleveland, she continues to make her number one mission is to inspire the uninspired. Oh, that's great. With the help of God, her je ne sais quoi, like I took French at Cleveland School of Science, and all of her thickness, yes. Catch this beautiful Black Amazonian woman in Lakewood, Ohio at Studio West on West 117th, Dauber Divas, and the Michigan Drag Brunch. Follow and book this traveling queen on Instagram at The Dakota Cox and Facebook at Dakota Cox. Let's welcome Dakota Cox.
Hey, y'all, what's going on?
Amazonian, right?
Yes, Amazonian goddess.
And last but certainly not least, we have Kenyon Farrow. His pronouns are he, him. He is Director of Communication of AVAC, where he leads the organization's communication strategy, narrative change efforts, and stakeholder engagement to expand access to HIV prevention and advance global health equity. He previously held the leadership role with Prep for All, TheBody.com, and the Treatment Action Group, focusing on health policies, advocacy, and media. He is the president of the LGBTC of Greater Cleveland and widely published writer and co-editor of the Letters from Young Activists. Kenyon's work has earned recognition from Out Magazine, The Advocate, BET, and others for his impact on Black LGBTQ+ health and justice. Let's welcome Kenyon Farrow.
Thank you.
We have some great talent up here, right? And we have great talent in Cleveland, period, across the board. But it's good to sit up here with you guys, and let's just dig into the conversation, right? So let's begin with personal journeys. Can each of you share a bit of your early life experience, and I will too, how that shaped your relationship with your family and border your relationship with the community?
Are you looking at me, so I'll start.
Why not?
So I'm from Cleveland, born and raised. I grew up in Garden Valley in the Rainbow Terrace Apartments, which I think everybody saw had that horrible fire last week. And I can say from growing up there that that place has always been so terribly managed. Yeah. So it was tragic but not surprising to me when I saw that news. So I grew up primarily there until I was about 14, and I'm one of three. I have two sisters. I'm in the middle. And I'm maybe not contrary to folks in this room, but I think the kind of larger narrative that we deal with is that the Black community is more homophobic than everybody else. And that just was not my experience. My family, and I'm talking not just my mom, but my aunts, my uncles, my dad, my grandparents, had queer people in their lives, in the community. It was never any secret. My mom's and my aunt's best friend, my Uncle Roger, who was gay, and would come over in various states of drag. Sometimes it was all boy. Roger had the first weave we ever saw in the hood. Sometimes to like a full beat and wig, like the whole bit, right? We've all these pictures. So in that sense, that was how I grew up. And so it was when I was starting to just kind of reckon with my own sexuality, I feel very blessed to have known that my family was going to be okay with my sexuality, from the rip. And, when I started to come out at like 18, 19, whatever, then it was just like, okay, yeah. Like, girl, we knew. It was all that Donna Summer you played when I was a kid, So, Donna Summer and Shaka Khan. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I felt very lucky. Now, I think the other thing that kind of influenced like how both I view my own, kind of identity and also the work that I would do is, coming from a family of of activists, particularly on my mom's side. And my mom was a member of the Black Panther Party here in Cleveland. She left when Fred Hampton was assassinated in Chicago because she had my older sister at the time, and felt like it was too dangerous. She did tenant organizing in Garden Valley when I was a kid growing up there. Did a lot of stuff around getting rid of the Chief Wahoo and the Cleveland Indians stuff before she moved to South Carolina. So she's, kind of active in that sense. But also when I was 14, my mother used to make us watch a whole bunch of stuff on PBS all the time. Eyes on the prize. We had to sit and watch all 10,000 hours of it. All the things. But one of the things that she made us watch when I was 14 was a film called Tongues Untied, which people know was filmmaker Marlon Riggs's film about kind of the lives of black gay men. Was shot in the late 80s and became a national story because much like we hear now with threats to defund PBS and NPR, whatever, there was a similar effort in the 80s led by Jesse Helms, who was a senator of North Carolina, and he used Tongues Untied as the example for why the Congress should not fund PBS, and some local stations pulled it, but Cleveland still aired it. And my mother made us watch it for that reason. And seeing those black gay men who were, writers and organizers who had a feminist politic as well it was like watching that at 14, I was like, okay, that's where I'm going, And so I think that really shaped, who I am and the work I do now.
Awesome.
We're going down the line.
Well, we don't have to.
Might as well go down the line.
All right.
I'm like, where do I start in my story? It's such a journey. I think I'll start with growing up over here on the east side. I grew up on the street, Thornwood. Forgive me about areas because I moved away pretty young, so I don't know exactly what area that is. But growing up over here, I was in the church, praise dancing, miming, in the choir, doing church plays and stuff like that. So that kind of like molded me in the beginning for all of the musical theater and everything that I was going to get involved in. And then my parents moved me right before we got into middle school. And I went over into Fairview, which is over on the west side, Lakewood kind of area-ish. And growing up over there, I was one of the few chocolate drops in the school in the grade I was in, and that was kind of a hard shift to go from being around my people and dropped into
Sure, it was some type of culture shock.
Yeah, most definitely. So it took me a minute to kind of like find my wings. I was always in theater and choir and just kind of living outside of my body because I was not at that time okay with looking myself in the mirror and saying that I was gay, even though everyone around me knew. I was always coming to school, everything had to be matching, or I had something shiny on. So I was kind of always the eyeball out, especially in high school. And then that kind of molded me once I got into myself, I would say 17, 18, then I really started to realize, okay, it's time to kind of start being honest with thyself and telling yourself the truth and being comfortable enough to look in the mirror and be like, okay, this is exactly what it is. And then being free enough to tell that to other people. So it was really a up and down kind of journey in my head. But once I got to 18, I felt like I could flourish as the black queer person that I was. And then I had to figure out how I was going to use all of my theater and performing and all of that, because I was like, what do I do now? I kind of felt like, I always say I felt like Jennifer Hudson in Dreamgirls, she's like, the only thing I've ever done is performed. Like, I don't know anything else but performing. And then it was going to bounce like right before it closed and seeing drag queens like Carrie Nichols and Cardi Rae Diamond, Jolie Black. I was watching those girls and I was like, oh, this is like everything in one, and I also get to manage my own self. Nobody has to tell me what to do. I can envision and come up with anything that pops into my imagination, I can do it. So finding drag around 2021, and then having to kind of really get the ball rolling. So I've been doing drag now for 8 years, basically all of my 20s in the community. And boy, has that been a journey. I could talk about that too as well, but I'm kind of still getting through it. And kind of still finding my place too as well, because as some of you may know, being in the community, it is hard for us to find a space where we are comfortable and feel like we're accepted. And so we're still working on that. I'm working at Studio S 117th in Lakewood right now, doing drag bingo 4 to 6. And even though it's a small amount of time, it's my time to put what I can out into the community. And that's everything that I've known my whole entire existence is loving yourself, loving other people, loving God, if that's your thing too, because that's my thing. Yeah, so we're still working. We're still doing the work in the community, definitely trying to push forward, because we know we being pulled back right now.
All right. Hi, Third Space. Y'all can hear me all right? Yeah. Okay. Could I get the question one more time, beloved?
Okay. Let's share a personal journey.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about your personal life experience.
Okay.
Your early life experience.
Okay, right. Okay.
And how did that shape your relationship with your family and your community?
Okay. Early childhood. I come from a single working class mother who comes from a single working class mother. Heavily in the church. I'm actually not from Cleveland. I'm from Mansfield. My family is from Mansfield, Ohio. Both sides. I don't know if y'all know the Langs or the Flemings anywhere, you know. Those are probably my people. I would say I was always very outspoken, to a fault mostly. I would say things I shouldn't have. One of the earliest memories I have of getting slapped was telling my grandma I was a girl when I was a little kid, and her explaining to me all the reasons that wasn't the case and how it shouldn't be the case and it shouldn't even be something I wanted. So, you know, that was tied up very neatly and put away. And I went on to have many different coming outs. I would say the first time I was probably pulled out. I was trying to hide. I tried really hard to be like a dude, and it didn't really work out too well for me. But I was cute though. I was super cute. But it wasn't really until probably I moved out of my mom's house and started living with some friends that I started just really playing with my self-expression more. And that was kind of my gateway to really becoming. I would say my biggest becoming was just expressing myself. And living with my friends who were also like queer and like trans in various ways. You know, we were all experimenting. We were broke as hell. We were thrifting and like cutting shit up and calling it fashion. And, you know, we were like doing a lot of drugs and just exploring life. It was like a couple years into that, that a man I was actually dealing with kind of saw me, if you will, and told me that he saw kind of through whatever I was giving at the time. And I sat with that, and then I actually just took the step forward, changing how I addressed myself, changing how I wanted people to address me. And with my work, it really was murder that got me into my work. Around the time that I was coming out and coming into myself, black trans women were being murdered kind of back to back in Ohio and across the country. I would say probably one of the most striking ones was Samaya Dove, or Cece Dove, who was murdered by a guy, I don't know if she was dating or dealing with, but similar to Emmett Till. He murdered her and tied an industrial fan around her neck and threw her in a pond. I think he stabbed her like over 50 times or something like that. This was also around the time Alon Nettles was beaten not to death, but beaten unconscious in New York City by a man who had hit on her, was attracted to her, and somebody said, oh, she's trans, and he beat her, and she later died, and he is in prison. So I got connected with Trans Women of Color Collective, which was a collective of black and brown trans women in New York City who had a lot of self-respect and were deeply anchored in their blackness, and that kind of ended up being, I went from being like queer and like broke and like drugs with my friends to this kind of self-respecting young black woman navigating a whole new terrain. So yeah, that feels like a good opening.
Well, it was wonderful. I'll share a little bit about myself. For me, life, I feel like it wasn't too easy for me. Like Kenya and I grew up in the Kinsman neighborhood, and I was a change of life baby. Like my siblings are all in their 60s. My parents had me. I was the only one playing that my father says, but life growing up for me was kind of difficult because I looked like a girl. Like I was very soft. I was a dancer. I was shaped different. And, you know, I had older siblings that just were very old school, and they didn't know how to handle me, as well as my mother. Like my mother was very Shirley. She was very stoic, and she taught me a lot about resiliency, and she gave me my creativity. But my mother wasn't a loving mother. Like she just, I don't know, and I tell people all the time, I don't know the comfort of a mother. I don't know the comfort of a woman. And I often feel like if I were to know the comfort of a woman, I probably would be married with children. But it wasn't until I was 17 that I just absolutely got tired of looking like a girl. Everyone thought that I was a girl. So I went home and like shaved my face and got all these razor bumps. And then I started to grow a beard because I wanted to make myself more masculine. I always did not think about my sexuality as far as being with men or anything like that. I thought I was at the time more sapio demi pansexual, like whoever made me feel good, then that's who I was going to be with. But in that tune, I was kind of forced to be gay because that's all they knew. You're gay, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay, you're gay. And so I was like, well, maybe I am gay. You know what I'm saying? Let me just appease them. But in that appeasement, I began to isolate myself from my family and create my own path. Everything that I've done in my life has been self-generated, self-motivated. From the age of 14, I knew what I wanted to do with my life, and they could not stop me. Like, that was my ploy. Like, they just could not tell me anything. You couldn't talk to me about nothing. You couldn't give me any advice. I was very much so, put my own self through college. I hustled, sold things, and did things just so that I could be the creative of who I wanted to be, because I knew in my heart that one day they would come around, that one day they would find some type of understanding, because I knew early on that battle was not mine. It was something that they needed to figure out, because I knew that I was full of love. I knew that I was full of wanting to have family, and then that pushed me to find my chosen family that I've been friends with for over 40 years, and we're still friends to this day. Now I have a great relationship with my siblings. I told them earlier, I left, went away, traveled the world, but I had to come back to this God-forsaken place in 2010 to take care of my mama, who had Parkinson's and Alzheimer's after my poppy died. And I had to come back and take care of my saboteur. And I asked her on one of her days of a clear mind, like, Mama, why was you so mean to me? And then she said, I knew you can handle it. I knew that you could handle it. And that set me free. And from that moment, I've been cooking like grease. I've been, because it was, a man needs his mom. A man needs that comfort. And it wasn't until that moment is that I felt the closest with her. And I knew that my work of philanthropy and advocacy and teaching these kids and all of this stuff was not in vain. There it is. Activism, right? Often starts from a place of personal truth. What moved each of you into activism and organizing work? And how have your Black and queer identities informed that path? Let's start with you, Erin.
I actually don't identify as queer. Black is really my main organizing principle, my main kind of political North Star, if you will. I first got started with activism just because shit didn't make sense to me. That's kind of still why. I was about to say, I hope so. Y'all gotta get the bleeper for me, because I'm kind of... But yeah, I mean, a lot of shit didn't make sense to me, and I was like, well, let's figure out what we can do, because this doesn't make any sense. So that looked like Greenpeace. I think Greenpeace was actually probably one of my first official organizing spaces. Anybody who's not familiar with Greenpeace, they're a climate organization. At the time, we were fighting against what was it? I think it was coal or something. I can't even remember. But I started with Greenpeace, and I went on to Greater Columbus Empowerment Center, which is a HIV prevention center in Columbus, Ohio. And from there, I got into my work with TWOC, like I mentioned earlier. It was, I think, TWOC more so than the other things were, I was afraid, one. I was afraid for my own life. So a part of it was trying to advocate for myself and for women like me, and trying to get a message out that we didn't deserve to be bludgeoned or set on fire, and killed just for being who we are. But it's kind of come back to stuff just doesn't make sense to me. I think different than a lot of other and how they're living in relation to other living beings on this planet. So through my activism, it has been, it was originally to fill a need, and now I'm just trying to get a message across and seeing how many people I can touch, and essentially, I guess, for lack of a better term, wake up to the church of what's happening now. And yeah, so it's looked a lot of ways. It's been organizing. It's been speaking. It's been, cussing out police and, being in the street and all that fun stuff. But now I'm just really how do I shift how we see ourselves in relation to this big, beautiful planet we're all on?
That's dope. For so many years, I have been working with the Black community. And like I was telling you guys before, like it wasn't until recently that I added queerness and LGBT to that many layers of what I've been doing, because I've been doing so many pro-Black things. There's a West African word called Ubuntu, which means I am, therefore we are. I see myself in you. And that has been my philosophy in teach, because I teach at 4 and 5 different schools throughout the school year. And I have to set aside my queerness just so I can get the message through. Now that I have added on working with queer youth, it makes all the work. I was prepared for this, because it's nothing like working with youth, but Black queer youth, and we'll get into that. It's a little. It's that we have to do. So that's great, because that makes total sense. Hearing you say that, it also makes me reflect, and hearing things that Kenyon was saying, and then hearing things that you were saying, it makes me reflect, because sometimes we question ourselves as educators and philanthropists and advocacy people. Are we doing the right thing? Are we doing enough? Are we doing too little? So it's dope that we have similar paths, similar stories. But
yes, I just want to add to that with the Black and queer piece. I think so much of my work has been forcing like queerness, transness to be seen through the lens of Blackness. I've never been able to separate the two personally, because my family, even like on my dad's side, like I have a biological trans aunt, I have aunts that are lesbians, I grew up seeing, and my dad's side is hood booger city, so it's like I saw extremely like real Black people with these identities, and they may not have called it that, but for me it's always been about, no, this is not like a plus this is, we are Black, we are Black all the time, and our identities and sexualities and whatever, that all is an addition, but I am nigga,
and that's great that you had that type of thing, because there are a lot of people like me who grew up with an ignorant family who did not understand it. Well, yeah, but you still had some type of outline there. Me being like the first one, the open one. I had to deal with a lot of shit, and it's cool now. I got through it, but there are a lot of people like that. And most of those youth are being put out. They're being, out here using drugs. They're out here selling their bodies. They're out here doing the wrong things because of family. But I digress.
Where do I start with the activism? I didn't actually know that was a part of drag when I first started. I was kind of just living in like the artsy world. I was like, oh, this is nice. Like I get to do all of the songs and everything I've been doing in my room, my hairbrush and my mirror. But then I think the switch happened during COVID. I think like 2020, I realized I was like, oh, this is much bigger than me just loving the arts and me wanting to put my talent on the stage. This is definitely way bigger than that. There's a need in my community. There's a need in the Black queer community, the Black trans community as well, because I get to see them almost every week, every weekend. So I was like, what do we need? And the need is the self-love part of it. I always say it always starts inside first. This is the reason why we're struggling to look at each other and not look at our phones when we're out in a public setting or anything like that. I'm like, what's going on inside that we can't see each other when we're in the room?
Well, could you be a lady 24 hours a day?
I could not be a lady 24 hours a day.
Women,
I could not. I do.
y'all go through a lot.
Okay, I pulled this.
And I know that there's some sense of release and comfort and all of that when you just get to take all that shit off.
Yes, when I get to take it off, that's my favorite part. I love the 3 to 4 minutes that I'm on stage, but after that, I'm so glad I get to take that wig off
Yes.
and untuck. Hello. It is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But I do understand when you say that how being in front of the camera, being, and on the stage, in your persona, you didn't know how much of an advocate you were. And it's much more than embracing your femininity.
Right.
It's much more than just dressing up in a wig. It's about courage.
Yeah.
It's about standing 10 toes down in who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It's about integrity. It's about all of those things that you display in those 3 and 4 minutes.
Absolutely.
That you're on stage, that you have healed or inspired somebody in your audience.
Absolutely.
And I feel like that's dope.
Yeah,
That's dope.
and we're still working on it in our community for sure. It's definitely been a task to still pinpoint exactly what's going on, and I think it's really starting at home. It's really starting in the mirror. I always make people do now at shows. I make them say out loud, "I am enough." I count. I say 1, 2, 3, so that they know that they can have some sort of encouragement to go back home with. I think they leave shows and they're like, oh, they gave us what they wanted to show us, but what did we take away from it? And I feel like that's one thing that everybody can always take away from my show. I say, wake up tomorrow morning, you might be a little tipsy, you might be a little bit out of it, but look in that mirror and say, I am enough. Because it's starting at home first, and then we come out in the community and we can look at each other and say, you are enough.
So, Kenya, on a corporate level,
I wouldn't describe myself as corporate.
I couldn't think of any other way. I couldn't think of any other word to use. But I know that you, throughout your tenure of your career, I know you have seen all different kind of data and stats.
Sure.
So, from that what do you think?
Yeah. I kind of described in the beginning some of my activism. I got honest because so I described my mom. Also, on my mom's side, I come from a long line of AME ministers, men and women, and one of my great uncles is in a lot of a couple still photography with MLK, because he was doing kind of in that circle. My great aunt, my grandmother's sister, who was a registered nurse, married to an AME minister. When they had a church in San Francisco in the 60s, she was one of the nurses that helped the Black Panthers establish clinics in the Bay Area. So I kind of got it honest, right? But if you had asked me when I was a kid, first of all, my grandmother, my mom's mom, used to always say, you're going to be a preacher when you grow up. And I was like hell I am. I'm not doing that shit. I was like, no way in hell.
That's funny. My mom always told me that I was going to be a teacher and a good father. And I was like, ciao, bye.
Right. I was like, I'm not doing that. But get somebody else to do it. But also similar to you, I've started out in the arts. I started taking modern and jazz dance classes at Garden Valley Neighborhood House when I was 7 years old. I was the only boy in those classes, and then went on to take more dance and then theater. Once I went to Hawken for high school, and then studied theater.
Hawken.
Well, listen. I said earlier, don't let the private school fool you. I'm from the Valley.
Yes.
But I went to Hawken for 4 years, right? So, and then on the Howard Wesleyan where I majored in theater. And so when I moved to New York, first I came back here, worked for Great Lakes Theater Festival, as one of the teaching artists, and then I moved to New York to do theater. Was the plan, and I was relatively successful. I got the Stage Actors Equity, Actors Equity, which is the stage union, the union for stage actors. I got my equity card within a year of being in New York. But it just began to feel a little empty when 9/11 happened while I was living in New York. A lot of my friends were organizers and activists, and several of whom were starting an organization at the time, which was called Fierce, which was organizing queer and trans youth around the kind of criminalization of black and brown queer and trans youth in the West Village. So if you know the West Village and Christopher Street, right, legendary kind of queer spaces or whatever. And in the early 2000s, now there were white people living in the neighborhood, but they were like, you know, old lefties who did, you know, it was like they lived there because that was what the neighborhood was like. But then you had these, you know, more kind of bougier corporate Wall Street people moving to the West Village and deciding they wanted the neighborhood to be like Greenwich, Connecticut, and not the neighborhood that they moved to. And so it was, so I went to one of like the community board, like New York City has like these community boards. And so I went to one of those meetings with my friends in like 2001 around the issue of like policing, and the kind of racist shit I heard from some of those residents on that panel was the thing. I was like, oh, hell no. Like, and so I just was like, I'm going to do this thing. And so I started to transition out of acting. I kind of like around 2002, I said, okay, I'm going to stop auditioning and I'll do, you know, if people call me to do work, I'll just work until the phone stops ringing. So I did theater for about another year and a half. And then started transition. And I started specifically doing communications and media strategy for social justice work, because when Fierce was getting off the grounds, brand new organization, and it was starting to be written about in the Village Voice and the New York Times or whatever, and like needed somebody who could write. And I was always a good writer. Much to the chagrin of many of my professors, because I could write a paper the day it was due and still get an A- on it. And I had one of my professors at Ohio West, he was like, I know you wrote this morning because you didn't spell check it, so I'm giving you a B+. And had you actually looked at this shit, you would have got an A+. I was like, okay. So, but that was the transition, and then I specifically got into HIV work, so around about 20 years ago when I was 30, a bunch of my friends, mostly, black and Puerto Rican, Dominican, gay men largely, were either seroconverting or contracting HIV around that time, or they were disclosing it to me for the first time. And I decided that has to be a part of what I'm doing as well, because I was doing more like police brutality and kind of criminal justice sort of organizing. And then I started to shift partially to HIV. I was also doing work around homelessness and LGBT folks. I was the executive director of an organization called Queers for Economic Justice in New York that organized LGBT folks in the New York City shelter system. And so that was kind of the pivot. And then through that, I started just writing a lot. My writing has always kind of been informed by the organizing and activist work that I was doing. So that was kind of the way it went.
Okay, then. Clock that T. So let's dive a little deeper, right? And we were kind of touching on this, Dakota and I, when we were talking of Dr. BB, who is a fab. I love me some Dr. BB, I swear I do. Mental health is deeply stigmatized, especially in black communities. Let's start there. Why do you think that is a stigma amongst black communities? Is it a sign of weakness? Is it a sign of defeat? You know, why is mental health and getting help for mental health always like an issue when it comes to the coloreds? The black people.
Yes, the coloreds.
That was a reach.
Again, I think it's just that hard internal work. You just don't want to do the work. And then I also think it's like a thing that's been passed down too as well, from our ancestors too, is, we don't want to go to the doctor. We don't want to go make sure things is all right. And we just don't.
I've heard a lot of people say, I don't know if you guys, especially the old folks, they would say that's white people shit. Mm-hmm. Like white people go to therapy. I don't need to go to the doctor unless I'm about to have a or have a heart attack.
And then also the care that's at the doctor too as well. I mean, we're not the first people to get the best care in the doctor's office. So that is also a thing too as well. So fear is at the top of the list for that one.
So Have each of you ever experienced or witnessed the impacts of depression and anxiety and mental health and mental illness? And how do you think our communities can do a better space in holding some type of healing for that?
Ew. I'm a depressed ass bitch, so definitely.
Right.
I think I agree. Fear is a huge thing in the Black community. Also, it's not free. Like,
True.
Getting competent mental health care is no small task, and then being able to afford competent mental health care is no small task. And I think when we're dealing with a population, Black people, who are under all different types of levels of stress, I need help right now. And you got a waiting list, and you don't accept my insurance, and I don't got the $150 out of pocket. And can you fix me in this one session that's going to be $150? The answer is no. So I think it's some of the stigma is a huge thing, and it's how we treat people who have mental health issues, and how we treat people who have mental illness. My ex-partner, literally for the past 3 years, I have been a caretaker while he was navigating multiple episodes. And one thing I learned very quickly is that people have no capacity to be there for people when they are actively in episodes. People will say, like, one of his family members, I told him to go and take a shower and lie down. And I was like, thanks a fucking lot for nothing. Like, I could have told him that. That's not the issue right here. We don't actually know how to be in loving space with people when they are in episodes, and they may not be as loving as we know them to be, and they might not be recognizable to us. And there aren't a lot of avenues even, you want to get people help. You can't force people into the doctors. You can't force people into psych wards. And then they get into psych wards, and you can't say they need to be here for this amount of time until they're, steady so they can you can't do any of that. And I think most of that is invisible to people who are not dealing with that directly. So that's a huge thing I learned, is it's not just, it costs a lot. It's not just stigma where people are like, well, I don't want to be labeled this way and then treated this way all the time, because that absolutely happens. Even me being close to him in the moment, I'm still like, I don't know how to separate him from what is happening with him right now. And everybody can't go to a NAMI support group. Everybody doesn't even know about these things. So a lot of people are suffering in silence, and that's people who have mental illnesses, and that's their loved ones who are trying to be there for them. And people don't have the capacity. So even when you want people to kind of surround a person, people have all these ideas of what a mental illness is. So people will say, well, you wouldn't do that if you were mentally ill. You're just evil. It's like, you would be surprised what people do when they're in the middle of an episode. So it's a huge lack of education, I would say, not just for Black people, across the board. I think severe mental illness is extremely, extremely misunderstood across the board. So that to me is a huge, huge barrier. And then I would also say, I am trans. I could go out in the street. Most people would say I am mentally ill. So when we talk about mental illness,
that's what they were taught.
I mean, but that's how a lot of people feel. And it is what it is. There are people who will talk and laugh with me, and if you ask them next week, do you think trans people are insane? Absolutely, yes. So when we talk about mental illness, what is even the spectrum, that we are talking about with it? I find our conversations around it lacking because we live in capitalism. So everything we have to do, it has to make money or it don't make sense. And a lot of the shit that we do and don't make sense because it ain't making no motherfucking money for none of us, So yeah, I don't even remember what my point was after that, other than It's more, not to pick on you or anything, but it's more than self-love. You know, people need resources. You know, people need housing. Like, there are so many barriers to good mental health, you know, and even as I sit here before you, a depressed ass bitch, like I said, you know, I am constantly navigating my own safety, fear around my own safety. We have a government right now that is actively targeting people like me, and people like you all on this panel, and people, all of us, for real. You know, we have a government that is actively targeting us. So what is mental health care in the middle of that? Yeah, like, what is that? And I don't think we have enough conversations about how asinine and how insane our society is. So when we're trying to normalize wellness in an insane society, it's a joke. And I'm laughing. Yeah.
Yeah. It is true, because someone's always dying to hear my baby crying. Yeah, you're right. So, as a collective, what could we do, or what are some ideas of what we can do to be able to show up for each other with these different issues? Like, what do we suggest? You know, like accountability, responsibility, and when we're addressing all these different tensions.
I know. I think presence. I think if I'm thinking like really like interpersonal level, I think being present with people, like being present with people who you know are supporting people who are navigating severe mental illnesses. I think we could all benefit from pushing ourselves past our comfort level with certain things, and actually being able to be present, because everything can't just be fixed. And I think some stuff we want, like, okay, well, I sat with you, you're better now, right? Like, no, I feel the same. And I think people don't really know how to navigate like how other people's mental health impacts their own. So they shy away from just being present. I think one thing what I really needed was more people to kind of circle around us while he was going through what he was going through. But people, you know, they like throw out the broom, like it'll be okay, you know, like.
So you think it's a fear thing?
I mean, I think it's just uncomfortable.
Okay.
I think it's an uncomfortable situation for people, and I think even with depression, you know, people are always like, stay with your depressed friend. I'm like, when I am in the throes of my depression, I am a rancid bitch. Like, and it's like, how do you stay around your friends when they aren't doing well and they can't hold it in? I think we actually have to practice. We actually have to push ourselves past our comfort zones. And that's on just the lowest level. Of course, higher up, fix the fucking world. But that's, you know, something else.
Yeah, when I go through my bouts, I guess I'm conditioned to isolate. Yeah, does that resonate with people? Like I'm conditioned for so many years that if I'm going through something, like I just don't want to be bothered with a motherfucker. Leave me alone. Turn my phone on. Don't call me. I'm not going out. I don't want to go to dinner. Like I just don't. I'm gonna watch TV and eat snacks. You know, which allowed me to gain 200 pounds because, you know, that is what I've been doing. I've isolated myself, and now I'm in a space now where I allow myself to grieve. Right. I allow myself to feel. And one thing that, and I tell this to my students, and it's so fucked up because I say a lot of things to my students that now I'm applying it to me. Like, how you going to tell them that? And you ain't doing that shit. But I tell my students all the time, let your heart break. Like, you have to heal from the inside out, not the outside in. And like I said, it wasn't until I experienced a heartbreak, and my heartbreak was losing my you know, both my parents and my brother and my dog of 15 years and a relationship of 14 years. After he left, I was done. Like, you could have like picked me up off the floor, honey. But the pandemic is what allowed me to see a revelation that God has been and the universe has been showing me all along. And I asked God, I was diagnosed with diabetes. And I said, God, you made me go through all this stuff all these years. To this point, if you heal me, you can have me. Right? I'll devote myself to whatever this purpose you put in me. And for the last 4 years, God has opened up so many doors for me because I allowed that in. But I allowed my friends to hear me, to be seen. I go to the lake. I go get sun. Because, you know, as black people, we all have vitamin D deficiencies. So why not go and sit in the sun and burn the fuck up? You know what I'm saying? Because we all got deficiency. I say D2, D3. Because I know it's a few of y'all that probably say D2, D3. So I go sit in the sun, but I never realized how much water and the sun is healing. It's a healing, right? But working, and I'm going a little deeper, working at the center, I see so many of our people who are dealing with this mental health issue. And then I also see the segregation. I see like, and then when they come in there, it's a little bit more hands-on. It's a little bit more that. But when the girls come in there, is just like, oh, give her some chips. You know what I mean? Like, we have some extra salad. Give her a salad. That's not what she needs. That's not what she needs. So showing up, what does that look like? What is accountability? What moving forward, if we had the resources to do something to help our community in the biggest capacity, in a great world, what would that look like? What do you think, Dakota? Like, what would that look like?
It's us continuing to get together and have the conversation, continuing to be around and be present for one another. Like I was saying earlier, being in the room and not being on our phones and actually being present with each other.
Saturday was a good time.
Saturday, I was just about to say Saturday, wow. Like, absolutely amazing to see so many of us in the room acknowledging each other, loving on each other.
And that's something that we don't often.
We don't have it. We don't have it. And every single time
something as intimate as
yes,
that.
Every
and
time
it was a Black Gay Pride festival. Like, just it was a private invite. Maybe 70 people showed up. We were here all the way through here, and it was a great time. We had entertainment. Dakota performed, and a couple other people. I had two of my friends that are poets and laureates that come and do their thing, and it was a good camaraderie. It was a good community. It was a good time.
Yes.
But the white party is coming up till August 16th.
Yes.
At Aura, but
and having the resources in places like that
having
too.
The resources, yeah,
exactly. Like, just having where you can go to get those medications, to get those treatments, to get that counseling. If we could start something like that, where it's like I don't know what to call it, like a Rolodex or something.
As a culinary arts instructor, I know that food is a bridger. It's a binder in a sense. And when me and Dr. BB were talking earlier, I was saying, like, what the fuck can we do? And I always a Soul Food Sunday or a Soul Food Saturday where we can offer those type of resources and offer those different type of things on a consistent basis. If things were consistent, that's another problem. That's the Black people.
We start something.
We lack with consistency. Let's just say it. We're procrastinators, and because we can get shit done real quick. Because I can do 89 different things and be procrastinating, but I have 6 weeks to do it. But the day that it's due, I can do it and then be mad that I got to do all this shit. But that is something that I feel like, and that's my contribution to that question, was that I think if we had something that's engaging, right? Because it's all about engagement and what Black people like. We like snacks.
We like to eat.
We like chicken. We like these things.
We love to eat.
So if we had something, but
and we
also
like free stuff too. We like
added
free stuff.
that into the fold. But I think what Dr. BB and Evelyn and Mordecai has opened is that third space could be that Underground Railroad in a sense, right?
Absolutely.
Because there are not a lot of spaces that want us in there. They're about image. They don't care about, and I won't name them, but because some of the places and some of the tables that I sit at in this city are bigwig people and leaders of corporations, that one of which I feel like should be the number one place that we are able to be there and be seen and not be masked as something. It should be what it is.
Yes.
But that's not happening. So when Dr. BB and Evelyn and Mordecai anyway, when they would say, well, what we gonna do together? A couple years ago, what we gonna do? And I was like, we can do X, Y, and Z, because I also sit on the board as a production manager for Feluke down in Central, which is our offices are in Friendly Inn, but Central and that area down there on Central is the most desolate place in Cleveland, with food deserts and poverty and violence. You know, every other day I've been watching the Cleveland Remembrance, where we see somebody getting killed on 55 or somebody getting killed on Woodland because that place is forgotten. Yeah. Right? So it's being consistent and having the opportunity. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to utilize whatever Dr. BB and Mordecai and Evelyn has to offer when it comes to us, because the need is with us. Yes. Right? That's...
No, just quickly.
Don't they?
What? I'm like 74. You know what?
Like 10 minutes away from you.
Okay. Like, what are you talking about, right? But there is that, like, it's a you know, cognitive split, right? And also the east side is just bigger geographically, so it's more. So whereas the center, where it is on the west side, people can come from various parts of the west side. Like the east side, you would actually need something here. Kinsman, Central, yeah. Harvard, Lee, you know, Miles, and you would need stuff in different places to reach, because just people are, you know, the east side is just geographically bigger, yeah. and also it needs more resources. Yeah. So I'm super glad to hear, you know, one, the third space is here and doing this work, and I think offering different kinds of things, because there's certain things, you know, like, you know, I think about, you know, myself as, you know, when I was like, you know, 19, 20, there were certain things like, you know, that people would have probably tried to market to me based on, you know, being 59 or, you know, early, you know, at that point, you know, we were like, you know, the hip hop generation, whatever. I'm like, I listened to some hip hop, but that wasn't my scene, right? Like, I was like, I'm a house head. And also, yes. Like, now what people call Afro punk, when there was no term for it, we were just like the weird kids like Denise Huxtable, right? Like, it was just like, nobody knew what to do with us.
Okay.
You know what? Living color, yeah. Big fall. You know, family spin, you know, like, so I think having different kinds of things for people to plug into and not making an assumption. I don't make an assumption because people are black or on the east side of a certain neighborhood that a certain thing is like going to draw everybody. Yeah. But I think the more stuff will then people will find something that they want to kind of grab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, looking at a more broader political landscape, especially over the past decade with Black Lives Matter and the rising of fascism. How do each of you interpret this moment we're in? Like, how is Black queer resistance uniquely positioned to respond? Come on, Aaron.
Right, I was looking at you like, go ahead, King. I don't think Black queer people are uniquely prepared to resist what is happening.
And not.
How I see this moment, how do I say this? In a lot of ways, I feel like our movement, if you will, was co-opted by our own refusal to reject capitalism.
Yes. Talk about it.
And what we are now dealing with, I think, is the result of years and years and years of looking to rich and shifted very much in the resurgence of movement. And I've been saying we were trying to, I guess, praise two saviors or worship two gods. We wanted revolution, but we still wanted our 501c3s. We still wanted our positions. We still wanted our salaries. And not that it's given, nobody gets paid or anything. I feel like capitalism wasn't being taken seriously in the midst of it, because niggas was getting rich. And it's like, what are y'all talking about? Like, we deserve this money. Like, we've worked really hard. And it's like, yes, and how are we making room for people who do just want to attain more and more capital? How are we making room for them to flourish in the midst of all of this? And I think I think our focus on representation, I think our focus on being seen, undermined what we were trying to accomplish. I also think that we greatly underestimated how deeply anti-Black of a nation we live in. And I think we greatly underestimated how small white people are. And what I mean by that, I think of Dear White People so much, right? And things similar to Dear White People, where we got too comfortable. Like, I feel like we organized Black Lives Matter, which was a phenomenon, which, did amazing things and is doing amazing things. Black Lives Matter, movement for Black lives, really, when we talk about Blackness and queerness and transness, they were really instrumental in having those two things, be together in conversation. Me and some of my girls were really instrumental also, in that happening. I lost my train of thought. Forgive me. This happens a lot. Yes, I think of Dear White People and stuff like that. We got too comfortable. We started talking at white people in public. We started saying we don't want to see them. We started having kitchen table conversations about white people on TV. And white people are like, y'all could still be slaves, right? Like, do y'all know this? Like, and
Talk your shit.
I don't think there was enough consideration about young white people and their parents who didn't have the wherewithal to actually educate their kids about what was happening. And what I think I'm saying, I hope y'all are following, because I barely am. But I saw, I think it was a tweet from some young white man that was like, we might be the generation that is more racist than our grandparents. I think we just underestimated anti-Blackness, and I think we underestimated that Black people, there is still no recourse for chattel slavery. I don't think we understood what all of that meant when we started pushing back so openly and clearly. And now they're like, well, we tried, We let y'all free. We let y'all get jobs. Y'all could even drink from the same water fountains as us. That wasn't enough. Then y'all didn't want us to be Pocahontas, and y'all didn't want us to be John Wayne anymore. And now y'all saying we still got to pay y'all back when y'all appear to be doing well. Look at Beyonce. Like, what is this? You know?
We gave you Beyonce.
Yeah.
We let you have.
Go
we
ahead.
let you have it.
Yeah. A lot of the kind of BLM stuff, like I said, I know all these folks, and I, for a long time, was trying to figure out my relationship to it. You know, I didn't get asked by people that I know very well to participate in certain kind of things or whatever. Fine, but I could see certain dynamics happening, and I wish that they had, because I would have said, I see some things here that are going to be problematic for y'all in the long run. And some of that stuff ended up playing out.
Had you said that, what do you think would have been the recourse?
Shut up, Kenyon. That's what they would have said.
Yeah. You know, so
You don't got no solutions.
Yeah.
You just got
It
critiqued.
was also because at that point I also had moved so much into doing HIV work, which it became very clear to me that movement did not give a shit about. I'm just going to be very honest. And frankly, and I think the other problem that I think that we have to grapple with as Black people in this country generally, in terms of how and when and under what context we 10 toes down, stand up and resist. We are far more willing to do those things when somebody dies at the end of a police revolt.
Baby.
Sometimes a vigilante, right? George Zimmerman, right?
My phone for me.
But the majority of us die prematurely.
You can just hit stop.
Because of racism and white supremacy, because of poor housing,
Every day.
lead,
Yes.
no access to health care.
Yes.
These are the things that kill us far more than the police do. And
that John Hopkins?
No, what John Hopkins? To that, right, to Cleveland Clinic here, if we're going to get specific to this place, then we can actually transform some stuff, I think.
Oh my gosh, I just want to say exactly one. But two, this makes me think of direct services and how there was so much wealth moved and still people not wanting to work in direct services to people. Like, it was all theoretical, it was all, think tanks and shit, but it was never like, can we open a hospital? Can we fund a wing of something? Can we give people money directly? That is, like, people don't want to do that. And I think a lot of, like you're saying, like with trans people specifically, a lot of stuff is like, well, they need direct services before they get like a manifesto about being trans and like how powerful that is. People need direct services. But no, I agree. I think damn it, you said something. I was like, oh my gosh, wait. It'll come back.
So, safe spaces.
Bullshit.
I feel you. Because, like, nothing is safe.
Where?
Where are they? So, they say that safe space is more than physical. It's emotional, cultural, and spiritual. Right? What do safe, affirming spaces for Black queer folks look like to you? I'm just going to say, like, there aren't any. Like, I don't feel safe. I say this all the time. Like, I don't feel safe in this world at all. Ever. Like, I never feel safe. I live in a building that I pay a whole lot of money for because this is the first time that I've ever felt safe. Like, you can't really get to me. You can't come through my window. You can't break into my truck. If I'm parked outside of my driveway, like, you got to get buzzed in. Like, you got to have a fob to get in. Like, even though it's not as safe, but I still feel safe. But I never feel safe. But I don't walk in this world fearful. I don't carry a gun because I might shoot a motherfucker. I just don't. Like, I don't want to kill anyone, but I don't carry one for that reason, because you can scare me one time and I'm going to pop you in the eye. It's going to be over. But this question is, what do safe, affirming spaces for Black queer folks look like to us? And where are they currently thriving, and where are they still needed? That's the last question, by the way.
Oh.
This is wow.
Oh, do you want to go?
I don't think I want to go.
Oh, okay.
No, really, I want to
perform at some places that we still feel might be safe places, but they're not. They're not.
I just don't think the framework of safe spaces is really necessary. I think where people are, dangers are afoot. I think, we get to decide what safety looks like for us in groups, in community, and I think that's ever changing. I think when we designate things or identities or people as safe, people have less motivation to interrogate their motives, thoughts, and actions. So I just don't find it to be a very necessary framework to operate from. I think a space can only be as safe as what the people have agreed upon in the space, you know? And again, that's changing. So I don't know. I think I remember people wanting to, some of the safest spaces I have been in have carried on me completely. Like some of the people who are supposed to be safe have been some of the most awful people I have dealt with in my life, you know, because I just don't think it's a useful way to categorize people. I don't always feel, I feel most in danger by the earth. I just feel like we're all way too comfortable with how sick of us the earth is. So most human beings can't really make me feel safe on earth, because I'm always like, she could just flip this shit around and we could all just be upside. Like, we're very comfortable. Like, she can't just turn this shit upside down for us. But yeah, I just don't think it's necessary. I think safety is decided in space with people, and that's work. I think when we talk about safe spaces, we want places where we don't actually have to do the work of relationship and community with one another. And yeah, I just think that's not real.
I agree too. I feel like it's very imaginary, and it's very scary for someone like me. You know, sometimes I'm the only chocolate drop on a flyer sometimes, and you wonder going into some of these places, like, is it security there for me? Are they there for the people who don't look like me? who are they here for? So it's always a concern for me, but it doesn't allow me to be fearful, because I'm still going to be there and take up space always. What can we do to work on it? Is that part of the question too? Jesus. I think that's still...
Say Jesus?
Yes, I called on him. I had to call on him because
church boy.
it's like we're still having the same conversation. So it's what is the change? Like, do we actually have to hit? Okay, do we have to hit somebody in the face? Do we got to drag somebody by their ankles to make them understand?
You know, I'm gonna say that, like, even though I have been gay bashed and beat up twice in my lifetime, I refuse. I swear, if I grab a nigga, he gonna die. Like, I just feel like I have so much pent up animosity inside of me that it's inside of me that I refrain from getting angry. You know, even with my siblings, and I have a sister who really have buttered my biscuit throughout these years. And I stay away from the bitch because I don't want to fuck her up. Like, you know what I'm saying? Because she has been. What's worse than, like, disrespectful? Like, she has been, like, just. But I still give her grace, and my mama always told me, do not change who you are because of them. Like, don't change who you are. Like, my mother knew that I had a gift. I knew that I had a gift. I knew that I was chosen to do things. I knew that I'm a seer and a visionary. I know all that things. I'm empathetic. I'm all of that. So I chose not to. But moving forward in my, and I never really say queer life, but my life as a black man, I just don't. I'm fearless. Like, I just can't. I don't walk looking over my shoulder. You know what I'm saying? I used to live up here on Parkwood at one time when it was hot. You know, I don't. You know. The block was hot. You know, and it, you know, being traumatic growing up on Kinsman, you know, it was funny to me because I knew a truth about some of these people in the hood. That you can call me whatever you want, but I know when nobody's looking or nobody's around, it's a whole nother story with me. So I already, you know, but we can play that game. I find it funny. I'll play that game with you. But you don't want, if they had cell phones back 25 years ago, it'll be a lot of niggas exposed. A lot. But I just choose not, because I can't change who I am for them because they fucked up. I just can't do it. So, but piggybacking off Aaron and piggybacking off of you, like, it's just, I don't find any safe spaces in people. or organization. Like, it's always that one person in a safe space that can fuck it up, that can make it bad, right? So, do we have any questions, any Q&A out here in the group back there?
Is it on now? Yeah. Now? Yeah. Okay. Don't whisper. Oh, I'm not going to whisper. I have some comments and then I have a question. I guess I would start with my question one question would be now what? But then I want to go on to say Parkinson's, and we take care of the ones because, I would say the ones that they don't consider to have a real job. So I understand Parkinson's, I understand dementia, father and mother, so I'm there. As far as the mental illness is concerned, I think it was about last year maybe it was a movie. It's actually a movie that was out, and it was about mental illness in the black community, and specifically with black men. And then following that, there was a group of, because another thing is that we don't have practitioners that we can relate to. And so there were black, I'm talking about certified with degree people who were in the mental illness, areas, and that could relate and could, that you could come to. Another thing I thought about when you were discussing it too also is there's also this premise of many times, we don't want to air our dirty laundry. That's another thing, that we hear, we used to hear a lot about. I heard it recently, but I can't remember what it was, but it was like, oh, you don't want people to know that about us. No, you don't want to talk about that. So, these were the things that I was thinking of, as you all were talking, and some of the things also that hold us back, which gets to my question of, yes, the state of things as they are now politically, and that's just like across the board for all of us. And by the way, I don't know why I thought of the Met Gala, because you were talking about appeasement. And I thought of the Met Gala, what was it, the Dandies? I thought about that too, while you were discussing it, about in terms of appeasement of, where we are also. So my question, I guess, going back to after I've said all this, is now what? And that is, because of the state of affairs across the board, and politically, because I heard activism and I heard other words also, but politically speaking, or in terms of, voting or whatever, is there some strategy, or there's some strategies, because we need some strategies, and I see you, but, we need something moving forward, because otherwise we talk to ourselves, and I call it hallway complainers. And hallway complainers aren't going to get you anywhere except to stay in the hallway. Thank you.
I feel like I can.
These things are set up for us to complain. Like all of us are doing work outside of the space. I just want to acknowledge, like, a lot of us are doing things that are not just this. But I would say, like, kind of what we need to do. I'll say the thing that I've been most on fire about lately is, I think that, talk kind of nationally, and I'm talking specifically about Cleveland, one of the problems, I think, is that we have allowed for black people who call themselves Democrats or liberals, they might even call themselves progressives, kind of in that segment of the party, if you will. Jettison or eliminate things that are actually good for most black people while they're using black people to jettison. Right? James Clyburn is a prime example of this, right? On so many levels. That man takes more, right? Congressperson from South Carolina, I think third ranking in the Democratic Congress. Under Hakeem Jeffries, a whole nother story. Nancy Pelosi, he takes more money from farmers than anybody else in Congress. So we're not getting any Medicare for all through James Clyburn. Secondly, if y'all remember here, the Senate race with Tim Ryan, who lost, James Clyburn was running in the primary against a young black woman from Columbus, right, Morgan Harper, who worked for the Center for Financial Protections Bureau, that Elizabeth Warren created or whatever. Endorsed Tim Ryan, white man, over Morgan Harper in the primary, which Democrats supposedly never do, right? They supposedly don't get involved until the primaries are over and then they endorse whoever the Democratic candidate is. So step over this young black woman to endorse Tim Ryan, who we all know lost. Because he didn't do any work here. I live in Cleveland Heights. I met the communications director, a black man actually from DC, at a Friendsgiving in Columbus. And I was in the elevator going down, talking mad shit about Tim Ryan's campaign. It was literally like the Thanksgiving right after that election. And so my friend is elbowing me in the elevator, and I'm like, what? And he was like, this is his communications director. And I was like, well, now you know what the fuck I'm talking about. And so we can discuss it. Right? And so, long story short, it was clear from things that he said. I said to him, I'm in Cleveland Heights, the biggest fucking hippie town suburb in Cleveland, right? Nobody knocked on my door. I didn't get a yard sign. Like, none of that happened. Like, what was because the impetus was, or the interest was, how do we save these white Republican men in the rural districts and the rural counties, and bring them back. So they didn't do shit in the city. And I knew from something that he said to me that they only came here and did door knocking days before that election. So all I have to say is, one of the things I think that we have that problem, and I think that part of the challenge I think with Cleveland has been a lot of the leadership here. That there's a lot of people in the council who've been there forever and are very parochial and myopic and only want to kind of be the HNIC of their little fiefdom and don't give a shit about the people in it, don't give a shit about the conditions here, don't give a shit about none of that. And people keep voting for them, right? And so we got to run some people, we got to do them on Johnny here. At every level, right? Like, to me, that's the strategy. That's what we got to do.
I agree. I agree, but I'm a little less hopeful. Okay, I was about to say I'm definitely not the hope. I'm not the hope train. I agree. I think what Zoran has done in New York City is I was like, oh wait. Is this a glimmer of hope? Are we done with the bullshit and we're actually going to elect people who are I'm going to bring your costs down. I'm going to make life better for literally everyone. But I don't know. I'm afraid for him. I am terrified for him. It's very early. He won that primary, but I'm just hoping he's able to see December at this point, because the old guard is hell-bent on they're all giving Scrooge. They're just all hell-bent on getting as much money as possible. But my real concern, something that I have been struggling with this